lecture 2. In this lecture, our focus is going to be on leadership competencies in the digital human resource era. Today, we are going to be diving into one of the most critical topics in modern HR leadership. And this has to do with the competencies that we need to successfully lead in the digital age. Before we start, I want you to think about this question. How many of you have experienced a technology implementation that failed not because of the technology itself, but because of leadership challenges? So just keep that in mind. And let me repeat the question again. How many of you have experienced a technology implementation that failed? And the failure was not because of the technology, but it was because of the leadership challenges. Just keep that in mind as we progress through today's lecture. Now, our focus would be to ensure that by the end of the lecture, you would be able to comfortably identify core leadership competencies that are required for human resource technology initiatives. Because we are building on a background from last week that as leaders in today's digital and competitive environment, you cannot lead without the use of technology. If you cannot lead without the use of technology, as leaders, how do we know the core leadership competencies we need to have so that we can be successful with dealing with people in terms and using technology to deal with people? Then the second objective would be that we should be able to assess digital leadership capabilities and technology fluency. How do we marry the two? Then we should also be able to apply some analytical thinking frameworks to human resource decision making. Most importantly, we should be able to design technology-enabled leadership development strategies, and then also foster innovation culture through strategic human resource technology adoption. And last but not the least, to be able to navigate the ethical considerations in human resource data management. The last part is very important for me. I'm always passionate about how ethical we can be as leaders. Anytime we raise the issue of ethics, we are concerned with the issue of right and wrong, and some of the ethical issues that would arise in our dealership with other people, in our dealership as leaders, in our leadership rules. We'll look at some of the ethical concerns that can be raised. Okay. Now, before we go deeper, I want to share some statistics with you. And these statistics will support why digital leadership matters today. Now, recent research actually shows that 80%, 85% of human resource leaders report technology as their top strategic priority. They report technology. So some people can be appointed to leadership positions, and their major priority would be maybe to transform the manual processes that were used or that are used in the organization into computerized processes. They want to automate them. And we are saying that most often than not these days, many leaders will indicate technology adoption and implementation as one of their topmost strategies. And that is not surprising, given the digital transformation we are all witnessing all around us, either in our individual lives, organizationally, or even nationally. But something should concern all of us. Digital transformation failures. 70% of digital transformation failures, unfortunately, are accounted or attributable to what? Leadership gaps. So there's this statistic that says that many of the technology failures that we see, it is not just because the technology is failing. Many of them the failures are as a result of the leadership failure, right? That's interesting. 70% of digital transformation failures are attributed to what? Leadership gaps and not necessarily technological failures. And this tells us something very crucial. It tells us that technology is only as good as the leader who implements or manages it. So if the leader is not good, the technology will be seen not to be good because it is not being implemented well. In fact, I like to say that technology actually amplifies leadership. Technology is able to amplify the leadership of people, both in terms of what? Their strength. If you are strong in terms of leadership and you are leading the adoption and implementation of technology, it will amplify your leadership skill. If you are also weak, it will expose you. So we say technology plays a critical role in amplifying leadership, both in terms of strength and in terms of what? In terms of weakness. So if, for instance, if you are a poor communicator, technology will not fix the fact that you are a poor communicator. In fact, it might actually make it worse because you will not be able to explain exactly why your organization is implementing this particular kind of technology or not. All right. Now, let me ask you a question. What digital leadership challenges have you encountered in your organization? Maybe one of you may be willing to share. What digital leadership challenges have you encountered? So you can, if you want to speak, you can unmute yourself and speak. If someone can share just one example or two, what digital leadership challenges have you encountered in your organizations? I'll repeat the question again. What digital leadership challenges have you encountered in your organization? Any response? I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. I am a technologically inclined person, so it makes it easier for me to see through my vision with some particular kinds of technology. And so when I'm implementing, because of my understanding of the technology, I am able to do it better in my organization. Others too, because of their nature, they are maybe technology leaders. They don't like technology. They are the BBCs we are referring to. So if they are going to implement technology, as we have explained earlier, the technology will amplify the weakness they have as a leader, and it will lead to the implementation challenges of the technology. This is just to set the tone for our discussion. And I still would want, I know you guys, almost all of you are working. So I would want to hear from you. What digital leadership challenges have you witnessed before in your organization? Maybe the leader in your organization or the CEO, the manager wanted to lead a technological innovation. But because of the nature of the leader, either the technology failed or succeeded. But in this case, we are looking for what? The challenge. Did the technology succeed? If it didn't succeed, what do you think may have accounted to the failure in terms of the leadership skill of the leader? Any response? Yes. Are you there? It's all evident. Yes.
Yes, I think for my experience, the technology failed not because the technology itself had a problem, but because the leader was not listening.
Exactly. The leader was not listening.
Was not listening to feedback from those that were expected to be the beneficiaries or the implementers of this technology.
So the
And so the
technology.
technology failed.
So we can say that last week we were saying that management buy-in or top management sponsorship is critical to technology leadership success. The opposite works. If those who are the grassroots, those who are the operational level staff, the middle level management, if you don't have the buy-in of this particular category of staff, that you can implement the technology all right, but they may end up just abandoning it and the technology will what? Will fail. A typical example is also if technology is going to be implemented and the requirements of those who are actually going to use the system is not considered. You don't listen to them, and you go and design a technology that will not actually fit the requirements of the operational staff. When the technology comes, there will be that disconnect between what actually happens on the ground and what the technology does. And so the technology may fail. The technology in this case is not failing because the technology is not fit for purpose. But the root cause of that failure would be because the leader did not listen. The digital leadership quality of the leader would be called into question. So, as leaders, what are the essential leadership skills we need to have for good HR technology initiatives? And essential leadership skills we need to have for HR technology initiatives are what we refer to as the core competencies a leader needs to have in this digital age. So in this particular slide, our focus will be to look at the core competencies. But we can just go back to some fundamentals. Before you can navigate or go around the complex decisions of ensuring that there is innovative culture in your organization, you need to master some core leadership competencies as a leader. That will make the HR technology you are bringing successful so that people will take it. So the skills we are talking about that you need to have are not just, I will refer to, they are not just nice to have skills. They are the make or break factors. So the core competencies are the make or break factors that can determine whether your technology investment will deliver the results, the required results, or will become what? Expensive failures. It can become expensive failures. So we have organized the core competencies into four essential areas. We are organizing them into four essential areas. The first one we are going to look at is vision and strategy as a core competency. Vision and strategy. And vision and strategy basically is about painting.
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I'm showing that these core competencies we are talking about as essential leadership skills, we are going to organize it into four areas. The first one we are going to look at, four focus areas. The first one we're going to look at is vision and strategy. And I'm saying that the vision and strategy basically paints the future picture. And this is where the leadership actually begins. Because if you are a leader and you are able to see and articulate a compelling future state, it will motivate your people to embrace the change you are bringing. But if you are not able to properly articulate it, so for instance, if it is about technology-enabled vision you have, it means that you should be able to paint a clear picture of how the technology will transform your human resource function, or how the technology will improve experiences for employees and what? And managers. So in this case, it is not about the technology per se. It is about the outcomes the technology will bring, the outcomes the technology will enable so that people's work will become much, much more easier. If the people realize that the technology is coming to make their work easier, they will accept it. If you are not able to articulate your technology-enabled vision properly, the employees in the organization will see the technology as coming to replace them. And if the technology is coming to replace them, what will they do? They will resist it. And if they resist it, the implementation of the technology will what? It will fail. It will fail. Okay. Now, so we can let's see some examples. Assuming we are implementing an AI-powered performance management system with advanced data analytic capabilities. But if you look at the nature of the organization, they don't see how this AI can come and support what they are doing. So in that case, there will be some kind of a disconnect. But you also have to understand that as upcoming managers or as managers, it is important that we are able to align the technology initiatives we want to bring with what? The business objective. So the technology is there, but the technology we are bringing, does it align with what the company or the organization was set up to do? So aligning tech initiatives with business objectives is very, very important. It will ensure that the HR technology investment we are bringing will directly support the broader organizational objectives. It also means that every technology decision will be connected to the business strategy. If the business strategy is to ensure that there's cost reduction, there's revenue growth, there is risk mitigation, or maybe we attaining a competitive advantage over our competitors, the technology should be aligned. It should be aligned with that. Then we should also, as a leader, you should also be able to create a compelling change narrative. You have to be able to communicate to the employees that, look, this thing that we are bringing, this is what is going to, these are the benefits of the system. This is how it's going to support you as an individual, how it's going to ensure your growth, and how it's going to lead to broader organizational objectives. If they don't see through these lines, and if we are not able to properly present a compelling narrative, the buy-in of the employees will not be there, and the technology may be abandoned when it is introduced. So that's the first core competency. We are looking at vision and strategy. The second one is change leadership. And with change leadership, we're interested in how, as a leader, you can ensure that the transformation you want to bring can actually happen. How do you ensure that? Having a great vision, as in the first one, it actually means nothing if you cannot execute the change. You can have a very beautiful vision, a nice vision, everybody likes it. But in fact, you are a very weak leader. You can communicate your vision and strategy very well. You are a weak leader. You cannot execute the change. And this is where many leaders actually struggle. They struggle because they are great at the strategy, but they are not great. They are very weak at the implementation. So if you are not able to balance having the perfect strategy and being good at strategy and being good at implementation, you would have problems. Under change leadership, we should be able to manage resistance to technology adoption as a leader. If you are bringing technology into an organization, not everybody will want to adopt or would like to adopt that technology. So what do you have to do? You have to manage the resistance, the anticipated resistance, and the actual resistance. And it starts with understanding that resistance is natural. Whether you like it or not, it will happen. Resistance is natural. And most often than not, resistance is what? It is rational. Because if I'm in an organization doing ABC, and you say you want to bring technology and to change whatever I'm doing to XYZ, it means that I have to learn new ways of doing things. So my first reaction would be, this thing, you are coming to make the work difficult for me. So if you are not able to communicate very well and deal with the rationale of the change, and also let the people understand why the change is coming, they will do what? They will resist it. Now, note that people resist change when they fear sometimes that the technology is coming to do what? To lead to job losses. Or it will lead to what? Skill obsolescence. Obsolescence means it will become to whatever they are doing will now be seen as being outdated, so they will not be able to do it. If they also realize that the technology you are bringing is going to lead to increased workload, they will be working more than they used to. They will try to resist it. Or if the people in the organization were very autonomous and you are introducing the technology and they realize that the technology is coming to take away their autonomy, they will do what? They will resist the technology. So as a leader, you should be able to manage the resistance to the technology adoption by finding a way. So your job is not just as a leader, is not to eliminate the resistance per se. But what do you want to do? You want to be able to address the underlying concerns that is causing the resistance. So if it is that they think that it is going to reduce their autonomy, you explain to them how the technology is rather going to give them their independence and power. Apart from that, as a leader, you should be able to build change champion networks. So it is not everybody you can talk to in the organization as a leader. You have heads of departments. You have unit heads. So your first point of call as a leader in terms of change leadership is to be able to do what? Engage these people and make them champions of whatever initiative you want to bring. Then we have mentioned this communication, it's also very, very important. The communication benefits all the stakeholders. So you should be able to communicate whatever you are bringing to very, very well. We have just looked at two, and the two we have looked at are vision and strategy, as well as what? Change leadership. There are others we also need to look at, two more. Project management. Now you have a vision and you have that leadership skill to be able to push the change through. Now let's look into the operational skills that can turn your vision into what? Into reality. And this brings us to the next two competencies. One, project management. And then the other one is what? Stakeholder management. These two are where many human resource leaders struggle, because you need different kinds of skills to be able to ensure that people will be brought on board. So let's look at project management. Now, if we are introducing an HR technology as a leader, we have to understand that HR technology projects are fundamentally different from other HR initiatives. So maybe when I say other HR initiatives, if people are just going on training as an HR initiative, or manually you are going to recruit people, you are going to write, advertise, people will apply using paper application forms, you sort it, you call them for interview face to face. It is different from trying to automate all these processes by introducing an HR technology as a leader. So your ability to be able to oversee this complex technology implementation that will come and replace all the manual stuff they were doing is very important. And overseeing the complex technology implementation requires, as a leader, your understanding that technology projects have unique characteristics. Technology projects have unique characteristics. One, they have dependencies, which means that one delayed component can do what? Can derail the other components. That's how technology implementations are. If one component is not properly done, it can affect the entire project. There are also technical risks that are there. For instance, if there was some traditional technology, some old technology in the organization, and you are bringing an advanced technology, it is possible that the one you are bringing may not be able to do what? Integrate with the one that is already there. So project management is very critical. Apart from that, when you are bringing the project, they are usually what we refer to as you trying to balance timelines. How soon can you implement the project? So timelines are very important, balancing the timeline, balancing the budget, how much you are going to spend, and balancing other constraints. If you are not able to balance this very well, it will lead to what we refer to in project management as what? Scope creep. It will lead to scope creep. Right, just a minute. Yeah, hello. Yes, so the third point is project management. I was just explaining a particular point in terms of managing timelines, managing the cost, the budget, and managing quality constraints. If you are not able, as a manager, as part of the new HR technology you are going to bring, if you are not able to manage it well, it will lead to what we call scope creep. And scope creep basically means we are going either above the timeline, above budget, and we are producing maybe shoddy projects. So scope creep can come in when you spend excessively above budget. Okay. Now the fourth competency I want us to look at is stakeholder management. You see, when you are implementing a new technology as a leader, you have to be able to understand that you need to build a coalition. And building a coalition means that you have to understand that there are several different stakeholders, and you need to ensure that all the stakeholders are what? They are on board. Technology projects usually succeed or fail based on the stakeholder support. You need the buy-in from the top executives. You need the cooperation from other departments. And you also need adoption from the end users, those who are going to use it. You need you need all their engagement. So usually we say that we use a term that you need an engaging C-suite in human resource technologies. A complete suite in human resource technology decision it means that you need to speak the people's language, the stakeholders' language, and address their concerns very well. Because you see, if you are the leader and you want to talk to your board to be able to buy into the technology you want to bring, you need to speak the language of the board. And the language of the board is that they are interested in what? Return on investment. They are interested in making sure that there's low risk. They are interested in ensuring that the company will be able to do better than other competitors. And they are also interested in what? Strategic alignment. How is what the technology you are bringing, how does it align very well with the organizational objectives? So always speaking the language of the stakeholders is very important. Apart from that, you also need to build cross-functional partnerships. You cannot say that because you are the leader, the moment the board agrees with you, that's all. Build cross-functional partnerships because the technology you are bringing is going to be cross-functional. It's going to serve the finance department, it will serve operations department, the accounting department. So you need the buy-in of all these people. Now, just to recap on the critical factors we have looked at here, we have looked at 4 essential leadership skills that you need as a leader to be able to manage technology initiatives very well in an organization. Vision, very important. And strategy. Then the second one is change leadership. The third one, project management skills. The other one is what? Stakeholder management and what? And engagement. Now, let's see if we can look at a scenario. And this scenario is a real world example. If assuming you recently worked with a global manufacturing company implementing a platform, an AI-powered recruitment platform, assuming the technology was very solid, and the business case was clear, the objectives was very clear. But during the implementation, they faced significant leadership challenges. One of the challenges was that the traditional recruiters, you remember this case is about a manufacturing entity implementing an AI-powered, AI-enabled recruitment platform so that people can apply online, the AI will assess them and whatnot. But when they were implementing it, they faced a number of challenges. Remember that before the implementation, the company would have had traditional HR management who will be dealing with recruitment and whatnot. Now, if you are bringing in this technology, one of the challenges you would face will be that the traditional recruiters will resist the technology because they will fear that they are now being what? Being replaced. So that's a challenge. That's the second challenge, that the system needs to integrate with whatever was already happening in the organization. So you may have integration challenges. Maybe the CEOs or the board may be concerned about the fact that the AI may be biased in terms of how it will analyze and shortlist candidates for recruitment. These are some of the challenges. But for this particular high-powered AI technology to succeed, there are a number of what we refer to as what? Success factors. There are a number of success factors. So if you are an HR manager, what I want to think about is, how would you have solved this problem? This is a beautiful technology that you want to introduce in an organization to deal with their rudimentary recruitment processes, to make it more tech enhancing, AI enabled, so that a lot of the manual processes will be reduced. But because you are going to do that, the HR guys are saying that, look, we won't take it, because if you bring it, it will replace whatever we're doing. They have also raised the issue that if you bring this technology, it will not be compatible with what was already happening in the organization. The top management are also saying that, no, we won't agree, because the AI is just a computer software. It may be biased towards some particular candidates and we may not be shortlisting some candidates. The board may also be saying that, look, we won't take it because return on investment is not clear. We are not sure whether this thing will bring us profit or increase revenue or whatever. So we are not interested. Assuming you were the HR manager, how would you have approached this initiative differently? How would you look at it? How would you approach it differently? What may be your first priority as a manager or as a leader? What would be your first priority, given the fact that the nature of the technology is beautiful? The technology, what you do is beautiful, but people are resisting it, and they are resisting it at different levels. If you were the HR manager, what would you do? What would be your first priority? What will be your first priority? You have just finished your MSc course and you have gone back to your organization and they say, wow, Amin Yahya has finished an MSc in leadership and organizational development. So we are promoting him to the position of deputy director. Now you have been assigned a role. You have been assigned a role to ensure that the old and rudimentary recruitment platform in the organization should be replaced by with a high-powered AI system. But they have raised a number of issues and say that, look, it's not because we don't like Amin Yahya, but we as HR managers, this thing will come and replace what we're doing, so we won't take it. We have also realized that if the technology comes, it will not be able to fit into what we have been doing. Then the top management are also saying that, look, this thing will be biased. It will be discriminating against people in terms of religion and where they come from, so we won't take it. Then the board is saying that, look, this thing, we are not sure if it will lead to increased profitability. If you are the leader in the organization, what will you do? What will you do? John Nater, what will you do? Philip Mensah Kwevu, what will you do? Hello, are you guys online?
Yes, sir.
Why you there? What will you do in that instance as a leader?
Hello, Prof.
Yes.
Sorry, you broke out a little.
Yes, I was saying that based on the case study I've explained, if you were the leader, what will you do? What will you consider as one of the critical success factors to ensure that the project will be implemented? What will you do? Any idea?
So,
No, okay.
Doc, so first of all, there need to be a buy-in by key stakeholders in the organization before the implementation.
Excellent. Yes. Buy-in.
Yeah.
Any other?
Prof, yes, I also think that you would have to first and foremost communicate the need of the implementation to the staff for them to understand the benefit of that initiatives, you need to be clearly communicate to them.
Clear communication, excellent. I like your submissions. So clear communication strategy, very important. Without a clear communication strategy, you are doomed to fail. Because the resistance you are going to face as a leader, they are not going to be mean resistance. Some will go to very high lengths to ensure that the project will not start off. To avoid all this chaos, the best bet would be to ensure that there's what? A clear communication strategy. Apart from that, what you can also possibly do is to ensure that you have a phased implementation. You don't bring in the technology and implement it in an abrupt manner. They should remove everything that has to do with the old one and implement the new one. You can do it in phases so that the change will not be very swift. It will be what? Slow, gradual, and it will be successful. Apart from that, we said in our first lecture that sometimes when technology is going to be implemented, as leaders, we often focus on the cost of the technology. So it's going to cost $1 million. We acquire it, we pay the $1 million, and we bring it into the organization with the hope that the implementation will succeed. It may not succeed. Investment in technology initiatives may not necessarily lead to what? Optimal returns. It may not lead to optimal returns on our investment because we need to invest in other things before we can realize the full potential of the technology investment. A typical example would be for us to invest in what? Comprehensive training programs, so that people will get to understand the technology better and how it is going to fit into their job roles. Apart from that, you need to have an open culture so that people can come and talk to you and give you feedback on the technology you are trying to implement. So we leave this case study with this critical question: how would you have approached this initiative differently? How you will approach it differently depends on what you see as what? The critical success factors. And those are the critical factors some of you identified. Now, I want to introduce you to a framework for assessing your digital leadership capabilities. What I want to do is not about being a technical expert, right? It is about having the right level of technology fluency to be able to what? To lead effectively. If you don't have any bit of technology fluency, you cannot lead technology initiatives, right? You must be a little bit technology literate before you can do that. Now, in terms of technology leadership capabilities, as I've indicated, this is a framework for assessing one's digital leadership capabilities. The first one is technical understanding. So we are looking at technology fluency dimensions as the first one. And the technology fluency dimensions, we look at technical understanding. Technical understanding means that you need to have basic knowledge of the technology landscape, at least. Understand how data flows through systems. You need to also understand how cybersecurity principles work and many other basic things. You don't need to be able to code like a technical person, but you need to understand the implications of what? Technical decisions. What will be the implications? Now, you also need strategic technology thinking. It's also very important. Strategic technology thinking. When we say strategic technology thinking, this is about your ability to at least evaluate technology solutions beyond just the features and the functionality. You should be able to look beyond the features and the functionality. Then you can ask questions like, can I assess implementation complexity? Because the implementation complexity is not only about the technical complexities. It is also about the culture in the organization. Are you getting it? So it is important that as a leader, you have the capability to be able to strategically think through the technology and the context in which it is going to be implemented. Another thing is, can you conduct meaningful cost-benefit analysis as a leader? This is critical as part of the implementation. Can you think through the long-term implications of the technology choice you have made as a leader? Sometimes politicians and some other kinds of leaders, they just look at the short-term benefits. Okay, it's 1 million. If we do it 1 million today, okay, at least I'll be able to get a 10% kickback. And then, well, up to, we can be given some room to do ABC up to the time my tenure will end. Maybe we will no longer be in power. I don't care what happens next. It's very dangerous. So as a leader, we need to think beyond when we are going to actually be in that position. How the sustainability of the technology is very, very important. So one, technical understanding. Two, strategic technology thinking. Then communication, very important. Digital communication. This one is often overlooked, but these days they are very critical. They're very important. Can you effectively communicate with the technical team? You are the leader. We say technology fluency is very important. When the developers come, when the tech guys come, are you able to understand some of the things they are talking about? If you don't understand it, leading the organization to implement this technology will be very difficult. Can you also be able to translate the business requirements into a language that the developers can understand? What do we mean by business requirements? If technology is going to be implemented, those in the organization would have their requirements, right? We call that the business requirements. They are the non-technical requirements. But the technology itself will also have its requirements, and we refer to that one as a what? The technical or functional requirements. As a leader, the employees in the organization want the technology to do. Can you communicate that to those who are going to develop the system in such a way that they will understand what your people want? Right? It's very important. Then the last but not the least is what? Continuous learning mindset. Because you need a continuous learning mindset as a leader. Why? Because technology changes very, very rapidly. So what is cutting edge technology today might be obsolete in a couple of years. So as a leader, you need to embrace what we refer to as experimentation and iteration. You need to be able to, at least, even when this technology you are implementing is working, know that in a couple of years, it may become obsolete. Try and experiment with other technologies, or try and see how the technology you have implemented can be tweaked just a little bit so that it can be what? It can be more recent, more up to date. You, as a leader, you need to be able to embrace this issue of experimentation. You need to be able to learn from your failures, and you need to be able to what? To stay current with what? The trends in terms of what? In terms of technology. Otherwise, you would fail. Okay. Now, the next thing I want us to do, this is very practical, and it will have been more easy to do if we're having a face-to-face session. I call it the self-assessment tool. Now, this self-assessment tool, you can even do it later when you get the slides. You need to complete this assessment in an honest manner. Maybe you can do it. Let's try and do it. What basically you are going to do is you are going to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 for each statement we are going to list. So get your pen or your calculator carefully, because you are going to be listing some numbers, and then the end we'll see how you score. So the first one is to use this tool to assess digital leadership readiness, whether you are digitally ready as a leader to be able to. So we use this. Now, the first one we looked at was what? Technology fluency in the last couple of slides. But what you have to understand is that the answers you are going to give me in the end, don't worry about being perfect, because this is just about identifying where development areas. So I'm going to give you some time to complete it. And what basically you are going to do is to rate yourself. So you read the statements and you rate yourself from 1 to 5. So the first one is, I understand basic functionality of human resource technology implementations or technology stack, something like that. Do you understand? If you agree, then your statement would be, so 1 to 5. You rate yourself for each statement. So let's take it that 5 will be high and 1 will be low, right? So I understand the basic functionality of HR technology. I can evaluate new technology solutions effectively. I feel confident discussing technology requirements with IT teams. And then also, so basically what this does is, it would have been good if we were to do this face-to-face. So you can do this maybe a bit later. Basically what this involves is that you read each statement about technology fluency, about change leadership, about strategic thinking, and then you score yourself where you think you are high or you are low. When you have done that, you should be able to identify your top development areas where you have scored the lowest and where you have scored the highest. Where you have scored the highest means that you are ready or you are conversant with the things you have chosen. All right. So we can use this to be able to determine whether a leader is digitally ready to be able to embark on a particular leadership role to lead the implementation of maybe an HR technology or some other kind of technology. Okay. So these assessment tools can be used by many different types of organizations to assess leadership, digital leadership readiness. Now, this brings us to something else. One of the most important shifts in modern HR leadership. Now, moving from, I say important because we are talking about moving away from intuition-based to evidence-based decision-making. And I'll give you an example. I think last week I even mentioned it. If you are appointed as a leader into a position, you are likely to be called by those who are in the organization to tell you that, look, we need to let you understand, you have just come. This is the way we do things in the organization. Rule of thumb, this is what we are doing. But you may also decide that, look, you are going to base a lot of things on your what? Your intuition, your mindset, your gut feeling. Do this and then you do it. It's not the best. We are moving away from all this to what we refer to as what? Evidence-based decision-making. Evidence-based decision-making. So please don't get me wrong. Experience and intuitions are very valuable, but they need to be complemented by what? Data. Data. You cannot be a leader and everything is about your gut feeling. Though we are not saying gut feelings are not important. They are important, but everything should not be about your intuition, gut feelings, and everything should be by what? By data. Right? Traditional human resource decision making often relied on gut feelings. Oh, the olden days, that's what they were doing, gut feelings. Anecdotal evidence, maybe a one-size-fits-all approach. This is the way we do it, so we have to do it that way. But today, in our data-rich environment, we can no longer lead like that. We can do so much better. We can use statistical analysis, we can use predictive modeling, and we can even use personalized interventions to deal with things that are happening in our individual organizations. So we are moving away from this traditional human resource decision-making approach as leaders to what we refer to as data-driven human resource leadership, where we as leaders will depend on what? Data, predictive modeling, statistical analysis, so that before you as a leader, you want to make a decision, you will ensure that you are presented with a comprehensive data, because you don't also have to generalize things. Something happens, you say, oh, this is the way we dealt with when it was this guy, this was the way we dealt with it. So you two are going to deal with it like that. No. As a leader, we need to be able to understand that there may be personalized and targeted interventions to deal with specific things that are happening in the organization. All right. So leading through what? Data. That's what we are emphasizing. As leaders, we must lead through data. And so we want to use what we call an analytical thinking framework to guide us as what? As leaders. And this analytical thinking framework is what we refer to as the DECIDE model. The DECIDE model for what? Data-driven decisions. Now, this framework can be used for any major human resource decision. It can be used for any major leadership decision. So, DECIDE model, what does it mean? The first one is D. If you look at the word DECIDE, D. And D means defining the problem clearly. As defining the problem clearly. So sometimes, some of us may have experienced the fact that sometimes the problem we think we are solving is not actually the problem. I don't know if it has happened to any of you. The problem you are trying to solve, either in your daily life or in your organizational life, that's not actually the problem. It's because you have not actually understood the facts that are related to the problem. So the first thing in the DECIDE model or framework is what? Defining the problem clearly. When you have defined the problem clearly, you need to establish the criteria for what? For the solutions. Establish criteria for solutions. And then you start thinking, what does success look like if we solve this problem? The second one is a C. Consider the alternatives. You don't just go with the first solution. If you are establishing the second stage, you establish criteria for solutions. Consider alternatives. You don't go with the first one. Look at the different approaches you could possibly take. Then we have I. When you have considered the alternatives, you identify the best alternative based on what? Your criteria. Then you develop and implement an action plan. And finally, when you have developed and implemented the action plan, you go back and evaluate and monitor the situation. You go back, monitor the situation. I'll take it a bit again in a different way. We are saying that we as leaders, we are moving into a new era, a transformative aspect of modern leadership. And we are shifting from what? Intuition-based to evidence-based decision-making, right? And so to do that, we need to use the DECIDE model, which gives us a structured framework we can use to apply to any human resource or leadership challenge, where data can be used to inform our decision-making process. And so we say that based on the DECIDE model for data-driven decision-making, the first thing is to what? To define the problem clearly. And we're saying that this is where most data analysis can go wrong. Because here you can jump to solutions before truly even understanding what the problem is. So you have to be able to define the problem clearly. And it means that distinguishing between the symptoms and what? The root causes. If you are not able to define the problem very well, you will have it will lead you to major other problems. Then the second thing is what? Establishing the criteria. Before you start analyzing data or considering the options, define what good looks like. What are your success criteria? What constraints do you need to work within, and many other things. And then we said the third one is what? Consider the alternatives. In fact, this step forces you to use data to generate multiple solutions. You are not just trying to validate your initial thinking or your initial hypothesis. You have to look at your data from different angles, right? That is C. Then I, you identify your best alternatives. Now that you have the data, you have to use the data to evaluate which alternatives will be most likely to succeed. And this usually involves analyzing both the probability of success and what? The potential impact, right? Then you go to D, develop and implement your action plan. To develop and implement your action plan, your data should inform you. It should inform your implementation strategy, not just the solution selection. So you have to use the data to be able to optimize by rolling out the timing, identifying the pilot groups you need to look at, and maybe planning other change management approaches, right? So E, which is the last one, you need to what? You need to evaluate and monitor your solution. And this is where the decide model becomes cyclical, because the moment you get here, you can go back to the beginning again to try to see, did I define the problem very well? So it can be what? Cyclical. Continuous monitoring can help you, can allow you to adjust your approach based on the results and maybe even identify when new decisions are needed. So as leaders, we should always be guided by this. We should be guided by the fact that we have to lead through what? Through data, so that we can, our thinking will be what? Very, 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 very analytical, right? If you are leading by data, the last slide was leading through data. Now, let me give you some concrete example of how data leadership works in practice. Data leadership, data is supporting you to what? To lead. For instance, in talent acquisition, we can use what we call predictive analytics to identify which candidates are most likely to succeed. So you have a lot of people working on a particular role based on what they have been doing, they have done in the past. You can use analytics to be able to identify which of the candidates are likely to succeed in that role because of their past or their previous history. That is data leadership. Then you can, this guy is likely to succeed based on the data. Now you give the person more support because you don't want to waste resources by pumping it into everyone. So we can use data leadership in talent analytics, even employee engagement. Employee engagement, we can use sentiment analysis on employee feedback so that we can identify the key drivers of engagement in our specific organization, right? Employee feedback, how are they giving you the feedback? Some are so emotional. Some are so emotional that even when they want to communicate the feedback, they see it in a negative light. We can use this to also lead the way they communicate feedback. That can give you an idea whether these guys actually buy into the initiative you are leading them to what? To implement or not. Engagement can help you a lot. Engagement can help a lot in this regard. Okay. Then we can also have performance management. We can also move beyond the annual reviews we do in our organizations to what? To continuous performance prediction. We can predict, we did this last year, how well are we going to do in the coming years, right? Data leadership. I'm just giving examples of how data can help us as leaders to be able to predict performance, to be able to engage with employees, and to be able to identify and acquire what? Talent. These are real world examples of how data leadership can help us. All right. Yeah. So these analytical thinking skills, how do we develop it? Because we are saying that if you have to be able to be a good data leader or have data leadership skills, you need some critical analytical thinking skills. How do you develop these analytical thinking skills? First, to be able to develop analytical thinking skills, you as a leader, you have to question everything. Everything that happens, question it, challenge the assumptions with data. When someone makes a claim, ask the person, how do you know this is true? And then you see their reaction. Many of us in our organization, if you ask your boss this, they will say you are challenging the boss. But you just want to rule, or you just want to lead or drive the organization in a particular direction where everything is guided by what? By data. Assuming you ask your boss that question, if your boss makes a claim and you ask, how do you know this is true? always, we have to be able to lead by data, seeking the evidence for the decisions we make. Apart from that, understanding your data is very important, not just questioning everything. As a leader, you need to understand your data, know where the data is coming from, what are the limitations of the data, and recognize the potential biases that may be embedded in the data and how the data was even collected. Very important. All right. Then, as a leader, to build your analytical thinking skills, you need to be able to visualize and communicate. You need to learn how to use data visualization tools as a leader to effectively communicate. You are doing a presentation as a leader to your employees or management, and the data is just bazaar. No one is able to tell exactly what you are trying to present. As a leader, you need to be able to communicate very well, either through your presentations or through just other means. So you need to, as a leader, you need to be able to learn to tell your stories with data and make complex analysis accessible to even those who are not technical people. They should be able to understand. Apart from that, to build your analytical thinking skills, you should be able to act on insights. The analysis you are able to do, the visualizations you are able to do as a leader, it is worthless if it does not lead to action. Yeah, you are the leader, you have the vision, you have the strategic thinking, but you cannot implement it. You cannot act. You cannot act. Your analysis will be worthless if it does not lead to action. So as a leader, you should be able to test your hypothesis and share the learning across the organization. This is what we did, and we failed. I often will acknowledge to my staff that, look, this thing we messed up. Because look, this is what the data is telling us. We should not have gone that way. Now the data says that we should go in this direction. The moment you do that, you have the buy-in of all your department heads, and you have the buy-in of all your staff, and you can go in the direction you want to go or take the organization as the leader. So data-driven leadership is very important, but you cannot do that if you don't have the analytical thinking skills to be able to leverage on what? On the data. Okay? I hope I'm not talking too much. All right, so let's move on. Now let's see how we can use technology to develop better leaders. How do we use technology to develop better leaders? In the past, the traditional approach has been that leaders will be trained in classrooms. They go to workshops, and then go there and they deliver generic content to them, and they come back and they don't know what they have learned. We can use technology to develop better leaders by using a technology-enabled approach. So we are saying that modern leadership development can be what? It can be personalized so that each leader will have, because each leader has a unique leadership needs or individual needs. So you cannot deliver generic content for them. You need personalized learning pathways for what? For leaders. And you can do this by delivering it through continuous micro learning. Everyone can sign in, and when they sign in, what they see will be different on the platform because of what? The characteristics or the job roles they are occupying. Even these days, we have what we call virtual reality or augmented reality. We can use devices to train leaders. We can use some computing devices these days to simulate how a leader should deal with a board, how a leader should approach a particular issue. And the leader can do these simulations in a virtual environment. Apart from that, many of the AI applications we see these days, it can coach you. For instance, ChatGPT. If you want to be a good leader, you can just activate the voice thing on your phone and be speaking to it. To how do you guide me to do ABC? It will speak back to you and show you how and coach you how you can become a better leader. Apart from that, many of us are on social media platforms these days. You can use a lot of social learning platforms, LinkedIn, and many others to learn to become what? A good leader. So we are encouraging not classroom-based learning, one-time workshops, or generic content delivery, but an approach that is technologically enabled so that leaders can go through personalized learning pathways to be able to learn things that are relevant to their organization so that they can lead and lead very well. Okay? Any question? Now, I want to jump onto something before I want to jump into something. This one is a case study. You can look at that. You see, there are some organizations, the culture in the organization is so toxic that they don't even accept innovation. They don't like innovation because of the nature of the organization. But we can foster an innovative culture by using what? Technology in an organization. And we can do that through the HR technology as a leader. Because you see, innovation doesn't just happen by accident. It needs to be systematically cultivated. And this is what we want to look at. As a leader, you need to be able to create an innovative or an innovation ecosystem. And to be able to create an innovation ecosystem, people in your organization should be happy to see change, technology-enabled change, things done in new and impactful ways. How do you create an innovation ecosystem? So we are going to look at some 3 critical components. The first is psychological safety. The second is technological infrastructure and recognition and awards. In terms of psychological safety, this concept was first of all popularized by some guys at Harvard. And they used it as a foundation of many innovative culture propositions. And here the emphasis is on the fact that employees need to feel safe. Employees need to feel safe to take risk in an organization by experimenting. If people in your organization are not given the opportunity to be able to experiment, there will never be innovativeness. As a leader, you also need to ensure that there's some learning culture in the organization. People should feel free to learn, and people should feel free. They should not be worried that when they are learning and they fail, they will be crucified. And apart from that, when people are trying to learn and they make progress, you have to celebrate those who are making progress as well, to encourage the others to what? To follow. So psychological safety, cycling your workforce is very important. You can do this by encouraging experimentation, learning from failure, and then what? Celebrating innovativeness. The second one is what? Technology infrastructure. If you want to foster innovative culture in your organization, technology infrastructure, the technology must be there in the first place for people to be able to experiment with it. So you have to provide the tools for collaboration. You have to provide it. If it's not there, can you just get one particular prototype from somewhere so that people can use and experiment in your organization in terms of how to be able to become innovative? And then the last but not the least, the third component, reward and recognition. Here, many organizations fail because they fail to what? Recognize innovative behaviors by rewarding innovative leadership. If people have taken calculated risk and they are successful, you need to be able to do what? Reward them for taking the calculated risk. We also have to be able to create an atmosphere where people can come and do what? Share their success stories. So people do wonderful things, but there's no platform for them to showcase how wonderfully they are performing. If you do this, if you suppress these things, the culture of innovation in your organization will die. And people will just sit back. They won't care about anything anymore. So we can also, in an organization, we can also conduct what we call innovation culture assessment as leaders. We can also use this scale to find out the innovative culture in an organization. Now, the last part of the lecture I want to concentrate on is ethics, ethical leadership, ethics. When we say ethics, we are interested in what? The issue of right and wrong. And ethics is usually referred to as the elephant in the room. There are things we don't want to talk about. Now, if you want to be a great leader, we are saying that everything you do should be driven by what? By data. You should be driven by data. You should be driven by data. If you want to have employee trust, you want to comply with external bodies, all you need is what? Data. But there are key ethical issues that you need to deal with. For instance, how are you using the data? How transparent are you in terms of the way you are handling the data? So there are key ethical principles as leaders we need to be wary of. Transparency. We should be clear about how we are using the data. When we are picking data from employees or other people, we need to seek explicit consent. They must have agreed. Consent is very important for data collection. We also need to be very fair in how the data is used. For instance, the algorithms that are used to build the AI and the other things we are using, they should not be biased towards some particular group of people. And another ethical issue is, in fact, the question even is, who is responsible for the decisions and the failures of the decisions we are making based on the data? Assuming the decisions we are making are based on the biases of the system. Should we hold the one who developed the system accountable or the leader who is taking the decision? These are all ethical issues we must consider when we are dealing with what? With data. When we are also dealing with data, it is important that we look at the issue of what? Privacy. There are some aspects of data that can be very, very sensitive. As a leader, you cannot just talk about them because you are the leader. No, you have to be very careful what you say. And as leaders, we also have to understand that when we say things, it carries weight. So we have to be very careful because people see us as being in a position of power. And what you say may be sacrosanct, it may be the truth. And because you are, as a leader, you are data-driven, if you say things, you may just be divulging sensitive information to people. So all of us should be guided by what? Leadership ethics. And so we must be guided by what we call, let me jump to this, what we call ethical decision framework. So as a leader, I need to be able to make decisions that are ethical. When decisions are ethical, we say the decisions are based on some ethical principles. Because for you to be able to make a decision on an issue which is ethical, you are faced with what we call an ethical dilemma. Which way do you go? You should be guided by this framework if you are faced with an ethical dilemma. And we refer to that ethical decision-making framework as the ethics model. So the word ethics is what is used to. So the first one, E, you need to be able to evaluate the situation, know what the facts are, who are the stakeholders, and what are the potential consequences. And then T, you think through the alternatives. What options are available? What are the trade-offs? How do stakeholders benefit or suffer? Then H, you honor ethical principles, the principles of transparency, honesty, respect for others, fairness, and justice. And then I is what? Identify the best course of action to take. The option you are going to take should serve the interests of all stakeholders. Then we will consider your decision to be what? Ethical. You also, as a leader, must consider what are the long-term implications of what you are doing. How does it align with the organizational objectives? Then C, consider the implementation. How will this be communicated? What support is needed? How will success be measured? And then the last one, scan for new development. As you are implementing the decision, what are the new things that are coming up? Monitor the outcomes and adjust as you go along so that you'll be able to learn for the sake of what? Future decisions. This particular explanation also has a case study, which I would prefer that you look at it at your free time. So all in all, the key takeaway for me in this particular lecture, as we come to the end of it, is for us to understand the core competencies that are needed for leaders to lead in digital human resource environment. And the first core competence we identified was what? Technology fluency. Second one, data-driven leadership, innovation culture, ethical leadership. This one summarizes all what we are doing. So the path forward, what's the way forward? As in digital human resource leadership, it requires what? Continuous learning, ethical grounding, and the courage to lead through what? Uncertainty. Note that the leaders who succeed will be those who can bridge the human and technical aspects of what? Organizational life. All aspects of organization, especially when technology implementations are involved, we often say are what? Socio-technical. And so as leaders, as we deal with the technical side, we also have to deal with what? The social side, so that we can balance it very, very well. Now, this brings us to the end of the lecture today, the end of our session today. But I would want, I'll share the slides very soon. When you get the slides, I want you to take some time to go through these questions. What is your biggest challenge in developing digital leadership capabilities? How do you balance innovation with what? Ethical considerations? And then what support do you need to implement these concepts? Just think through it. These are not examinable questions, but as you read through, these are some of the things I would want you to be thinking about. All right. Any question?